All right. Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone to the Washington Street Collaborative Work Group today. It's Friday, January 10th, 2025 at 11 a.m. And I am going to open the meeting today with public comment. And I just want to say first that I hope everyone had a lovely holiday and a good new year. And is there any public comment from anyone?
There is.
Okay, can we keep to the agenda items today?
Yeah, I just.
Okay, fantastic, thank you.
I'm
gonna.
Hello, Jerry. What's that, Jerry? Anyways, I emailed Leah, she emailed me back. I think you should have one of these presentation meetings in person. I'm not a Zoomer on my computer. I just use it for work. And the whole thing, the give and go, I'd rather have one in person where there's an ad on the radio right now, the local radio. I just heard yesterday where Framingham House and the employee said, oh, they want to give and take the community. I'm like, no, they don't. If they want to give and take, you have one open meeting and people can go and you can have a conversation at the meeting. So I think one of your presentation meetings like you did last summer, that was a good meeting. A lot of people went to that one, should be in person.
You're talking about the Whale Museum one, right?
Yeah, that was a good one. A lot of people went to that one. So I think it's easier, I like to see people talking. So,
All right,
yeah.
well, thank you.
That's my public comment.
All right, we can certainly discuss that.
All right, I go back to work. Thank you.
All right,
Have a good day.
thanks for your time.
Can you put the comment? Don't forget to back up.
There is someone from the public online. Yes. Is there any public comment from anyone online? I don't see any hands. Okay, so since there's no hands, I think we can move on to agenda item number 2, which is the Francis Street Beach Improvement Project. And we're going to start with an update on the discussion with the town's preservation planner. And thank you, Laura.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to kick us off, but welcome, Leah, Vince, please chime in. And also I wanted to note my colleague Lynn is in transit today, so she's listening, but she's off screen. Yeah, so we had a good meeting with Holly yesterday to discuss the Francis Street Beach Improvement Project and feedback or initial sort of reactions from the perspective of historic preservation. I think we had a really good conversation. She seemed to be pleased with the progress that had been made since the last time she'd seen the project. She expressed that she felt the option 1, the dune swoop, might be most appealing to the HTC, although she said they do sometimes like to see alternatives. And she, had a little bit of feedback on the representation style. She thought the slightly more, contextual in the aerial and subdued colors were working well. Those were my takeaways. I don't know, Leah, Vince, you were there. If there are other things you'd like to add.
Yeah, she was just asking about materials as far as the flood wall and the boardwalk. That's what we're calling it. And we said at this point we're not sure exactly what the materials are, but that's part of the plan for when we do pick the preferred alternative.
Yeah, we discussed brick and other things, but once we mentioned things like wood similar to Easy Street, she seemed to think that would be much easier, much more preferable, easier for the HDC. But we have to bear in mind that, I think you were the one that said it yesterday, that sometimes wood surfaces aren't the best for cycling on. So it might have to be thought about how we could maybe properly support it so it doesn't dip. Holly also mentioned about the history of the area and just trying to be sensitive to that. She talked about other buildings in the area. She talked about a lot about other adaptive measures. Then we brought her back to talking about the beachside structure by Francis Street Beach. And she seemed to think the way that it was put in the ground would make sense. She wanted to talk more about the materials. She liked the idea of the native plantings. All of that seemed to make sense to her. So it was generally positive.
Yeah.
Rich.
Yes.
Um, I'm curious about the dune swoop, like, is it more appealing visually or is there a historic precedent for it? Because that's sort of like, I mean, there's the design aesthetic, right? And then there is the like, in the context, was she able to identify why the dune swoop might fit in from a historical perspective?
Not
Um,
necessarily. She,
okay.
I think that was something of a personal preference, that it looked more natural.
Right,
But she said that would ultimately be something that the commission, the HDC, would wish to weigh in on.
Yeah.
She thought it might, because of the more natural appearance, it might look better to the commission. But she was reserved in her comment to say that they are the ones that may have to review this and make the decision. It was just her feeling ahead of that.
because to me, historically, because of construction methods, there weren't a lot of curves back in the day.
Right.
Things
True.
were more square. So from my gut instinct, from a historical perspective, it seems like something that's more straight line. Just, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I'm just curious, because I know the swoop appeals to me too, I just didn't know where it falls in historically, so.
The railroad was pretty straight. The railroad was pretty straight.
Yeah.
So, so the HDC may say, well, curves weren't, they might
Yeah.
be more appealing visually, but they weren't historically accurate.
I think one of the things that she was trying to explain to us is that, once it's got the vegetation up around it and it's curved, you don't necessarily see down the whole straight line of it very easily in any direction, so that you only see it in piece or in part and buried within vegetation. So she thought that would fit. Yeah.
The other thing she mentioned, I don't think it's necessarily a historic precedent, but, well, maybe, but was the geometry of the pathways at Konsu Spring and the fact that they're sort of sinuous, and that this felt like a extension of that language.
Makes sense.
Okay. I'll share the agenda. The next thing we had on the agenda was an update on the virtual open house advertisements and translation services. Leah, did you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I can talk about the virtual open house. Do you have a slide that has the advertisements in it?
I don't believe we do.
Okay, well, they were in the packet. So I worked with the communications office, and the advertisements got printed in the Inky, the print version and the digital. And I did hear today, I haven't gotten the paper yet, that the Inky did a write-up on it, so. It also got posted on the Current in their Instagram stories, and also on their e-blasts, Daybreak on their e-news 3 times, and then it's also on the radio 4 times a day.
That's great.
I also sent it out to hundreds of people, including all of the town staff. Libby has said that they can come to the virtual open houses, and that would count as a work hour. It got sent to all of the abutters, got sent to Great Harbor Yacht Club. I asked them if they could share it with their membership. Got sent to everyone that came to the first community open house in the summer. We had a list of like sustainability resilience emails, got sent to all the boards, committees, commissions. So hopefully people come.
Maybe we'll have a huge group.
Never know.
Okay.
Also, just touching on that, I also posted it. So I don't know what the work group plan is for attending. I know you have planning board on Monday. But if we do have quorum, as you all know, but Laura, in case you don't know, we have quorum for the work group. I also sent it to Crack as well. We need to open up the meeting at the virtual open house and then adjourn at the end. So that's just something that we need to, on Monday, we can talk about the logistics at our
I'm happy to
internal
turn it
meeting.
over if you want me to.
It's very simple. All you have to do is open it and then say that the committee's in attendance.
Yeah, that's
You
all.
don't have to do anything else, just close it at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. And you can tell us if, Rachel, Leah, one of you want to do it, or if we should be doing that.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on the advertisements or translation?
As far as the translation services, so I met with Florencia and her idea was that it'll be recorded and it will have Spanish subtitles, which will be posted onto the project website. The feedback sheet will also be translated and, there won't be interpretive services at the actual open house just because of the holidays and the logistics and everything. We just didn't have enough time to coordinate all of that. So there will also be a summary. I'm waiting to hear if it's a verbal summary or a written summary in Spanish, and that will be on the website as well.
And Zoom, I think offers the option for subtitles live
They
to the
do,
user, yeah.
yeah,
So, and I announced it at select board
Great.
Wednesday night
thank you,
at the end, so I didn't remember till then, but I did.
thank you.
Thank you. I just want to flag Lynn and Kelly and I dry ran the Spanish closed captions just before this. They're not great. They're really not good. So I don't know if that's our best approach. I think we can certainly provide a summary that, as you mentioned previously, Leah, could be translated by the Globo or the translators you're working with. But I just flagging, I don't think we should rely on the captions for accuracy. They're not so hot.
Okay, all right, yeah.
We may be able to test them now. If you on your Zoom turn on closed captions, we could peek at them. I speak like college level Spanish and they looked pretty not good to me. So Leah, on your end, if you click on the,
Yeah, in Spanish, so let's just see if we turn them on, if it works.
No, I know that.
I'm testing and saying something to see what happens.
I don't know how you turn them on.
Maybe try settings.
There should be at least on my end, there is a icon on the bottom that says CC.
We're working through.
I always show the captions and see what happens.
Where's
Up
that?
above, one more, yeah.
Hold on.
No, let's click out of that, see if it works. Hello? Nope. Okay, we can play around with that.
Yeah, we can do that on our test run Monday.
Yeah,
We just shouldn't rely on it, I don't think.
There you go.
oh, there we go,
There it is.
okay.
We got it.
Oh, apparently we were applauding.
Were you applauding? I don't think so, Cecil. I'm testing, I'm talking about coastal resilience to see how the captions work. Not so good.
Oh,
Okay.
That's okay. All that's saying is, yeah. Now.
I think we go to plan B on this.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Huh. I can translate back.
No captions.
Nobody said any of those.
It was a good idea in theory. Okay, so we'll close the loop on that, but we can certainly do some, post translation of a summary.
Okay, thank you.
I think you can record a transcript. Maybe that would be the way to do it. We'll look into that on our end.
I've tried that with Crack to help with minutes and it's not helpful.
It's not helpful. Okay. All right.
The AI
Well,
companion doesn't work very well. No.
What a surprise.
Come a long way.
The world is different, but wholly imperfect.
okay, so we're going to switch over and do a run through of the presentation. And there are some questions along the way, just a few moving items. Do you all see my Mentimeter screen?
Yeah.
It should be, okay. So we're gonna do the same thing we did last time where we'll just do a flip through. We're not gonna do a full dry run of the presentation today. We have time with Leah and Rachel and the team on Monday morning to run through and test talking points and all of that, but I'll just flip and show you what we have. So we will introduce Mentimeter, we'll talk about the context, talk about the two alternatives, and then have a deeper dive discussion in breakout rooms, and then a chance to report back if we do have multiple rooms, which we will, if we have more than, say 10 or 12 people, we'll break up into subgroups, and then we'll have a slide on next steps. So first, they will see the Mentimeter instructions. If anybody wants to run it again, we can do that today. It's the same thing we did at our last meeting, where you scan the QR code, or if you're at a computer, you can put in this website and this code and access without having to set up an account or log in or anything.
Laura, question.
Yes.
As far as the browser goes, if you go back, is there
Yes.
a possibility just to put a hyperlink in there?
Um,
I'm just trying to think of like an easier step for people than.
let us look into that.
Okay.
I mean, they wouldn't, we might be, what we might be able to do is put it in the chat, because they're not going to be able to click the screen, but they could click a link in the chat. So
Okay.
we can, that's a good flag. We can have somebody on deck to provide that. You've seen these questions before. What is your favorite waterfront space in Nantucket? Just an icebreaker and a chance for people to test drive and ask any questions as they're testing the Mentimeter. Then we'll do an introduction. I think we need to talk about speaking roles, but I imagine this might be you, Leah, talking a little bit about the background and the planning context. Obviously, we're happy to talk to any of these. This was a question these next two slides were ones we wanted to ask about. The Washington Street Collaborative Work Group, we pulled the list of participants who's on the website. Just wanted to see if and how you want to list the members and I think we just put them alphabetically, but if there's a different way they should be listed, just would look for that feedback.
For the sake of argument, when we did this, when we were finishing, say, the coast resilience plan, and we were looking at how to structure it there, we listed it kind of in terms of seniority. So select board first, then administration, then through departments and down that way.
We can restructure that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we can just acknowledge, or whoever's speaking to this can acknowledge, that this group was formed last summer as a joint effort with the land bank and the town. These are the participants who've been guiding the work. This was a question. We often will have images of the people who are in the room, who folks may be hearing from in terms of facilitation. Do we want to do that? Do we want to do it for both town and land bank staff as well as the consultant team? And if so, are these the right people?
For the town one, you have to have at least the select board reps and Libby, definitely.
So this is more like who's in the room, but
oh, I see.
I mean, we could do it just as you acknowledge in the previous slide, you acknowledge the participants in the collaborative work group. And here, this is about who's in the room as sub-consultant or as consultants. We weren't sure about if and how to address in-room facilitators.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to have their pictures.
Staff and consultants.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Staff and consultants, is that what you said?
Yeah, I think so. Without getting into all the technical stuff, staff is kind of covers. Or town staff, is that okay?
The town and land bank stuff.
Drew's name needs to be on there. You got it spelled wrong, I think. See one type. Last name is with a D, not a T, I believe.
Pat Mode,
It's a D, right?
PATMODE.
I don't know.
He was in the previous slide.
Oh,
Previous slide. Okay.
Sorry, Laura.
No, you're fine.
this one will just be who's in attendance at the virtual open house is kind of like running it.
Yeah,
So people.
I think it's fine.
Staff and consultants, we can say, who are facilitating the meeting. Okay, so maybe Leah, Rachel, we could connect and just mark up any corrections to the previous slide and then make sure we have the right folks who will be participating here. And then we'll have to ask you for headshots. Everyone's favorite. Okay. We will orient people to the project schedule if you think that's, helpful. And then we have a bit of context here. This is very consistent with the context boards that we created for the open house this summer, or the open houses this summer. So just, the kind of locating ourselves, talking about the importance to transportation, recreation, and access, talking about the flood pathways and how this project addresses, 2 of the 4 major flood pathways we see along Washington Street, mentioning how it fits into the coastal resilience plan and the water levels, that we are already seeing in recent storms. This one on the right is a new graphic, so we wanted to get your feedback on this. You've seen the one on the left before that just talks about ownership and the potential for collaboration among the land bank, the town, and other private homeowners. This one, what we were trying to do is to explain the strategy that that on the town and the land bank property, we can begin to provide access and create an elevated feature, and that there are opportunities to collaborate with neighbors on adaptations they want to make to their properties as well. And so we did it in this sort of general way by just highlighting those private properties. I think it's a question of these labels and whether we feel comfortable with those.
I think if we keep this, that in the highlighted areas that are blue, there shouldn't be any red lines.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like it
Okay.
should be
Just the parcel.
just the parcel.
Okay, we had that exact debate, so that's helpful. Okay,
Yeah, the one that goes through by the Frisbee's house, I don't want to take them on.
understood. Yep, so we could just highlight it would essentially be the same blobs that you see in the left image, noting that there's opportunity for collaboration. Do we want to, I think it makes a lot of sense to talk about this in terms of elevations that would contribute to resilience for Washington Street. Do we want to include this note about a potential multimodal path connection in the future, or is that more specific than we want to be in this case?
Maybe say something about that.
I can't read it.
We had that conversation last meeting, Laura, right? Remember we had Mike on? I think he's on somewhere
Yep.
now.
Yep.
In my conversation with Leah and like the overall improvement to Washington Street, whether it's making a path, not a path, but a spot for bikes, walking, whatever, on one side, and you already have this, you have to remember, we have a sidewalk with a lot of obstructions. That doesn't mean those obstructions are forever. But that's a separate, outside the scope of all of this, but at the same time, the way this gets built and what it can handle, which we've already, I think, concluded, especially with the latest stuff from Holly, that we want to go with that easy street sort of strength, right? Which is the right thing to do, in my opinion. That you got to remember, that's a shadowed road. That doesn't mean that people abide to the rules of what that means, but trying to create a big space is not the right thing to do. Even though I said it was 3 months ago, I don't think it is now. Because
no, I understood. Yeah.
You can't make people do what you want. It's not gonna happen like that. But you do need to make each side have like a little more of a shoulder for that bike that is inevitably being passed by a car, or different times of year, different traffic, when it's busy, when it isn't, that kind of thing. So an improvement to the road itself, to make it, I don't want to keep saying wider, but more multi-use is more important than trying to find a way to put 6 feet on the water side, for example. You know what I mean? I just don't see that happening. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're designing it in such a way that it wouldn't preclude that. It would allow that if that were to be possible in the future. I think my question was more whether this is something we call out here or whether that's less of the emphasis.
Could be like future or some kind of way to delineate. But that's gonna be a different.
Different project, yeah.
I mean, everybody talks about burying wires. I mean, you hear that every month. Somebody says it. That is not that easy. You know,
No, it's not, yeah.
but at the same time, that is part of something with those telephone poles is part of this conversation. If those poles weren't there, Vince, like just pretend that those poles were like all where that one pole is in a good right spot. There's only one that's in the right spot in the whole street. Okay, so let's say every one of them is off the sidewalk. We would be having a different conversation right now. We would be talking about this differently because of that sidewalk being completely blocked. You know, for normal walking. What do? Like, you can't just say, we're never gonna fix it, but we can't do that here. This discussion is not about that, but that
Right.
will be a future discussion. But making you know, some kind of statement, some kind of wording in this plan that future improvements to Washington Street for XYZ have been made apparent. Whether it's, you know, discussed at these meetings, whether it's something that's on the plan, I don't know, but
So just a statement, you're looking to put in.
I think we have to have something about Washington Street as far as that stuff goes.
Who oversees the licensing for poles? Is it NPDC or is it select board?
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
we're talking about a whole construction project. We're talking about.
yeah,
No, the reason I'm asking the question is I don't want to step on other groups.
some of
toes.
Verizon, some around, there's all kinds of
Erica
stuff.
Mooney,
Yeah.
as operations manager,
Yeah.
would be the contact on anything like that.
But then the select board okays it, or I guess?
Well, no, it would be
It's driven by
easements.
the utilities.
There's a million
Matthew's
things.
got his hand up. He's
Yeah.
the expert.
Yeah, Matt,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, hi. No,
Hi.
yeah, it's driven by, driven by the utilities, then they tell us why they can't do something.
right,
So, normally, I think Nat's right. I think what we don't want to highlight that the road, I think we don't want to highlight some of this, but I think we want to be able to say that, this plan is taken into consideration that, it will not impact, fixing the road in any way. It will not impact
that's true,
having
yeah.
something on the water. We've taken that into consideration. My other point is I'm not so worried about the line through the private property because I think that shows that this plan is taken into consideration the neighbors, issues too. And it's to the neighborhood, to those neighbors and the neighborhood benefit if it's to their benefit if this happens, that we have planned it so that they can take part themselves if they'd like to. So I think it's a positive showing that this has been designed to take their properties into consideration and help them and help the neighborhood. So I'm not so worried about it being in there, but I could be, whatever the group does, they can do.
I take the point, Matt, but after the result from the last time we showed stuff like that and the reaction, I think it causes more issues than it fixes. And the one that's furthest to the north in this one that goes by the Frisbee's new house that got moved, that one in particular could be, that could raise some concerns. So it's probably just safer not to show lines going through properties, even as a dashed line, because we've seen it. It gets taken out of context. It gets, I don't want to say misunderstood, but potentially misrepresented. So, for the sake of not causing another set of neighbor disruptions, it might be just better to leave out.
Yeah, I think just verbally explain that we've been in contact with a lot of the neighbors, but also the potential to work with them in the future.
To enhance resilience. Yeah. I think keeping opportunities for collaboration, no dash line, just highlighting the parcels, and then eliminating this label and maybe saying compatible with future mobility improvements to Washington Street or something like that, which, without indicating we're going to be able to address it through this first project, which we're not necessarily. Mike, I see your hand up. Yeah. go ahead.
Yeah, I would have a different tact on this. I'd say you got to be bold and not hide the where your thinking is. And I don't mind the dash lines on there at all. I think that we do that a lot in planning, is just put generally dash lines to say conceptually something is the path is going to go through this area. And that's a good conversation starter. I don't think you should hide that. And I think it's going to create good dialogue. And we should do that at this point, because this is very conceptual right now. We need to understand these things to figure it out. But I'll also say about Washington Street, we should show something there about how the bicycles and pedestrians are going to be accommodated along that corridor. I mean, we do have a select board preferred alternative for how to accommodate that along this corridor. That's a lot of work went into that. I shared a lot of that work with Scape and with Leah, and I don't want to lose that. And we do have a conversation with BPAC in a couple of weeks on January 22nd to talk about how we're going to mesh those two different ideas, that this resiliency improvement as well as the bike and pedestrian accommodation. I mean, if state money is going to go into this, I mean, there is a Mass DOT vision and goal to anytime money is spent on a transportation on a corridor that, you know, you should be accommodating all users. So I think we need to show that as best we can with here. Again, if it's got to be conceptually, fine. But I think I did share some of those conceptual plans with Scape, and I really would like to see those incorporated here, because I think we would lose that idea if we didn't do that.
Up here, Mike, in the early part, I love concepts. We put them out there. We show them to people. The reaction was so terrifically poor for misunderstanding what a concept is. People thought we were replacing their houses, taking them off them. They didn't understand the point of a concept. I would be very reluctant to go back to it. I'm a big, massive proponent of putting out concept images. It didn't go well on this project. I would not re-invite it. We've already been beaten up once.
Okay, so just to be clear, are we not going to have a multi-use path through this corridor along the water's edge? I mean, because if we're going to do it, we should talk about it now.
Mike, are you talking about multi-use path boardwalk?
Yeah, just to be clear, the red line that we're showing through here, I think that's fantastic that it's if bicyclists want to use that corridor, pedestrians want to walk along, that's going to look nice. But frankly, it's going to be secondary to the corridor itself. That is going to be your commuting corridor for the bicyclists. They're going to be using Washington Street itself.
That's the straight shot. Yeah.
But if you don't want to have that the red line there, and there's really no appetite to have some kind of pedestrian circulation through that area, then we should just remove the red line altogether and say there's really not going to be you're going to have little patches of where the pedestrians can walk from one edge of a parcel to the other, and then you're going to hit a dead end. You should be honest about that, or we just drop it and just not have that in there. But I think this is the time we have those conversations. And if it's going to, you know, if we have to have difficult conversations through this and walk people through this, I think it's an educational opportunity, and it helps us not lose these great ideas.
We have looked at this, and when we ever talk about the long-term concepting for beyond the Francis Street Beach, it always ends up going very negatively. It has not been well received. We just want to give an idea, start it as the idea that it is, and not make it look so set, not so as though it's definitely going to happen. I imagine this is going to be what, maybe 3, 4, 5 phases of development over time after Francis Street. So it'll have to be piecemeal. It'll have to be worked out. We can't go in like a raging bull and say, this is what's happening. That has lost a little bit of support on this already. So I appreciate what you're saying, Mike, but you know, once bitten, twice shy on this one, I'm afraid.
But I think the red line out on the town and land-based properties needs to stay.
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion? Just a
Yes,
thought.
please.
I'm trying to bring both sides together. I think one of the things that is coming up is, and I saw this even just yesterday when Leah and I were meeting with an abutter, which is that whatever is on this sheet is often taken as
Fact.
this is exactly what's happening. So down to the level of that tree, which is drawn in that parking lot, is going.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
And we all know, because we look at these plans all the time, that is absolutely not true, right? So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's a way to not have the red line when you introduce this slide, and basically, you know, have a separate, not separate, but a secondary discussion about one of the things that we're considering conceptually is a multimodal path that would extend along the length of Washington Street, you know, and perhaps across the top of the dune. You know, this line that we've put in, like call it out specifically, this line, you know, and then show a red line, not across private property owners, but, you know, this line, the goal is to have it extend, you know, and provide a access path, but to verbally talk people through the fact that wherever you've drawn this line on this sheet of paper is probably not where it's going to end up. You
Yeah,
know,
it's an early conceptual study. Yeah.
really irrelevant to what's gonna happen in reality, but, you know, we're conceptualizing that there would be a path from one end to the other that people could walk on. I don't know, just
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Rachel. I want to say one thing, and I see your hand, Joe. I think maybe part of the confusion or challenge with this diagram is that we are trying to say there is the potential for a coordinated risk reduction approach, which would mean creating elevated features that have the potential to tie into what neighbors might want to do on their properties. Because the question always comes up of, well, if you do this next to me, am I going to have more water on mine? So in a way, this diagram, the pink line is representing both the elevation, the elevated element, and the potential for a path, because they could follow one another. But maybe we take the path piece out of, or we don't, you know, we highlight it somewhere, but this diagram is not about the path. It's actually about, as we elevate, we will look for, you know, and we are having discussions with neighbors and what they're planning in order to think about how we can address some of the other flood pathways along Washington Street. Yeah. Yeah, Joe, what were you gonna say?
You said exactly what I was gonna say.
Okay. Yeah, Matt, I see your hand.
It just,
Oh.
I think part of what we're doing with this process is, you know, is informing people over time that, and some of that hopefully some of these misconceptions go away. Right now, if I were one of the property owners, I wouldn't want a path in front of my house.
Sure.
But the other side of that, though, is if you think about it, say the far left houses there, maybe they do want it in front if it's going to protect their property. If it's going to be raised 4 feet and there's going to be less flooding on their property, they may actually want it. And, you know, over time. And so if we're just going to run the path and we're going to go around behind you so that you're going to take the brunt of anything that happens, I think, you know, the more we talk about it, the more it gets out there, the more likely people are going to be in 5 or 10 years when it happens to say, yeah, we actually want the path, you know, in front of us, not behind us. You know, so I think the more, like, I'm not scared of it, you know. I understand that maybe we don't do it now, you know, but I think we should be keeping it, or we make it its own point. That, you know, make it its own point in this presentation or in a future one, but not, and I'm not saying we're trying to duck it, but not keep it out of the discussion, because I think Mike is right. This has to be, you know, the more we talk about it, the more comfortable people will get, the more ideas we'll get from them, the more they're going to eventually embrace it. Part of the problem that we've had with a lot of, you know, planning stuff over the last few years is people, you know, don't feel their voices are heard and don't feel like we've ran a process with enough meetings and enough conversation and we didn't listen to them. And so then they're against it, even though they shouldn't be. And we're trying to do this process where we are hearing them and listening to them. So they should, you know, when we're done, if we do this right and do this enough, they'll be in favor of it in 5 or 10 years. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I see your hand, Brooke.
Yeah, can I offer some language that might be helpful here?
Yes, please.
This is the first phase of a project that is designed to create protective elements for both public and private property as the need arises over time. In other words, we're looking to help private property owners protect their assets while we're coordinating with public assets. We're not imposing. The idea is that we're helping. This project is intended to help them. Some language around that, and you know, I get the need to socialize this early and often, but I also think red is probably a really bad color.
Fair, yeah.
Use a more subtle
Wow.
color.
Yeah, sure.
It doesn't go, I'm gonna have a red line across the
Yeah.
front of my house,
Yeah,
right?
that's very fair.
So maybe maybe make it more subtle and have narratively say, the idea here is we're protecting assets, whether they're private or public, in the long run from sea level rise.
So there's one thing I do worry about in this, Brooke, and not everyone will want to accept that. And forgive me for being a little bit selfish in this. It's a lovely idea to propose, and then when it comes to it, we have to work with them.
Phone calls.
Hello, me and Leah and Rachel are going to get shouted at repeatedly. And, you know, it makes for a more interesting day at work, certainly, but it also doesn't help when we try and calm people down and we're trying to explain things. So if I can mitigate against that, I'd love to try.
So none of which will happen without extensive input from those property owners.
Well, the first conversations always go for interesting.
I'd like to build on Brooke's comment about the red. I'd also like to add that the scale of that line makes it look like that is a boardwalk. And I think if we change the color and maybe make it more of a broad brush arrow showing some kind of connection from up near Commercial Street down to Francis Street, without all these little curves and that make it look like this is a done deal, I think it would be more appealing.
So
Just to show that there's a connection, but it's not defined as like a location of the boardwalk.
there is another interesting point in this. For the kind of the more southern ones, there's the tiny little one, that little house called Puddin, and then there's 54 and 56 in the center. We've engaged with those. They are aware of this.
And they're
So-
looking at what they can do on their property that can tie in from what we understand. Yeah.
But we haven't engaged with anyone beyond that. So, you know, to see it for first time in a public presentation, it's really hard to take as though you haven't been engaged. We haven't talked to the people up around the Frisbee properties at all. We've not engaged with them. We haven't had a reason to yet. And the one that was owned by Codillacs, what is now where the Murray Mitchell aquarium is, we haven't engaged with them either. Yeah, the Anglers Club now, but we have to talk with these people before we put these things into the public sphere. Like, that is one of the problems that we haven't addressed yet because we haven't gone that far yet.
Okay,
Mhm.
can someone explain the urgency of doing this at this presentation? I don't
Well,
think there's
that-
urgency now.
That's actually what I was gonna say. I mean, I don't know how long we spent talking about this one slide.
Yeah.
And
This slide can go bye-bye if we wanted to. Yeah.
I think what, you know, ultimately you want to talk about Francis Street and you know, I actually had dinner with somebody last night who said, you know, what's all this about and why are you doing this? Why is Remain involved? And you know, what I said is that there's a beautiful vision for how we could be more resilient on Washington Street and still have access for cars, bikes, and humans walking along Washington Street with increased flooding. So the vision is gorgeous. We're so many steps towards getting there. And we're talking about Francis Street. So if this is gonna really like blow up the conversation, then either show them something really gorgeous that's so make-believe that everybody's like, oh, it's gonna be so beautiful, or don't show them something that's gonna make them sweat. So I kind of think we need to like not have this, like get
We
rid
could remove this and we could say, this is about collaboration. The town and the land bank are doing, you know, developing this first project on, you know, on this key corner. And there's the potential for collaboration with other properties in the future. I mean, I think people have seen the framework plan, so I don't know if we need it, but
And
yeah.
Laura, when you talk about it like, you know, we are tasked, we collectively are tasked with coming up with a beautiful, resilient solution for what potentially is a major problem for everybody who lives on Nantucket. It's how we get our bananas, it's how we get our oil, it's how we get our building supplies. This is such an important stretch. So from a transportation point of view, it's critical from, you know, just how people greet the island, it's critical. And it is, you know, you've already shown them pictures of sunny day flooding down there. So it's a problem. We're gonna solve it. We're tasked with solving it. Here are the players. It's town, it's land bank, it's private individuals. We're all gonna work together to solve multimodal transportation issues. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the
I mean,
story.
we need to look at this like Baxter Road in town.
Nope,
It's not-
no.
No, yeah, we do, for real. There's no like
Yeah,
other
private
place to
property.
go. We're not gonna take Union Street, make it two-way someday.
Oh, you can't say
So
that
what I'm
because
saying
we're
is-
actually going to, for Baxter Road, we're actually going to Sanctity Road, so
Well, you know
no,
what?
comparison doesn't work.
Alright. Yes.
I'm wondering if we should move on to the
I
next.
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we should, but
I think-
I just don't want Mike to think we're not
Yeah.
thinking what he's thinking too. So I do have a tiny little suggestion for this, for Laura and
Yeah.
you. I don't know if this makes any sense. I do agree with Brooke on the color, maybe make it blue like the other one, I don't know.
Yeah, or green.
What about having two lines or two dotted lines in the properties that we don't know what's gonna happen? So that it doesn't look like, okay, this is where it's going, it can like say, potential here, like two different spots.
An A and a B.
So in other words,
Yeah.
the part that we know where we wanna put this boardwalk, right? Versus where we think this part will go, but we're not really sure. We could have that possibly to soften this a little bit, number one. Number two, Mike, what is the legal Massachusetts law? I hate to bring this stuff up, but with these little low-speed things and all this other stuff that's coming, by the time this project's built, we're gonna think it's the Jetsons. I'm telling you right now, there's gonna be all kinds of different things going on.
I will,
Mike, what is the rule about shadowed roads versus not? Like, is there a mass law about that?
I think we're getting.
Is that
the cart before the
stupid?
horse.
Okay.
I think we're
Alright, no,
way
it's fine.
down the road. This is years
Alright,
away.
I'm just thinking about,
And I think the first
Okay.
neighbor that collaborates on the next stretch of this is gonna demonstrate for the next neighbors.
exactly.
Yes.
That's
Let
a
let
good
them get
idea.
excited
but
about
no
it.
one knows
Yeah.
about that though. So
But
that,
they do, they've seen it. I mean, we've
no,
shown,
I'm talking about that's what Vince is concerned with.
well,
You know what I mean? That's all, you
but
know.
but we have shown this. We showed it in September. It was it's been on your website.
Okay.
People have had a chance to see it.
It's okay anyways, because we're gonna be doing an in-person, in-person.
With the neighbors.
With the neighbors soon anyways.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm not actually saying that, but you know, it's been recommended to
Potential,
us, so
yeah.
there's potential for that. There will be additional outreach events, so I think we always have an opportunity to bring back more information. I'm not sure that removing this is the worst idea ever.
Yeah.
Should we jump to Mike?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
And I know you want to move on to other subjects, and I got to jump off here in a second. I just want to make sure that the bike lane concept for the Washington Street, that this project wouldn't obstruct that. And I think it would be healthy to at least show the public that we are thinking about accommodating bicyclists along the corridor. And again, we can continue that conversation with the BPAC committee on the 22nd. But again, the boardwalk areas, to me, that is completely secondary. And Vince, fair enough, if that's showing a boardwalk going through private property is fine, but that's so much less important than Washington Street itself for bike and pedestrian accommodation. To me,
Yeah.
that is number one priority, and that's already been vetted through a very long process that I don't know if everybody on this call has been part of that process, but there was a lot of outreach that went through to settle on that concept of having bike lanes along Washington Street. And that is the preferred concept that's in our long range transportation plan. And that's what I would like to see, at least communicated in graphics, that a recognition that is something that's being thought about as part of this process. Thanks.
Mike, I have a quick question. I know we need to move on, but I think we have the dimension with the setback at at the waterfront at Francis Street Beach to have, to include the bike lane. I think, as you well know, the pinch points are at put in, and I think at 54, 56, where you don't have that setback. So I think we can, ensure that we're not precluding that. But I think the disruptions to that plan are actually private property, so that's an issue.
Understood.
But I think we can say that we're in, aligning with long-term mobility planning for Washington Street. So we're making sure we're enabling that on these parcels.
Good.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna keep going. You make a diagram quickly and you never know. It takes our time. Okay.
Laura, we're leaving that one out for now.
Is that, so we will make this large, and we will the title talks about building a constituency around resilience, where this is an opportunity for collaboration, and we can sort of leave it high level. That's what I'm understanding. This one goes away.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank
Laura,
you.
the previous slide was about flood pathways, right? So there's an opportunity to say there's shared risk and there's
Yes, I think
opportunities
that
for shared opportunities for
absolutely.
addressing that risk.
Yeah, yes. I do have another question about that, but I'm going to hold it so we can keep going. Okay, so just identifying the site. We are because people have seen this before, we're acknowledging that there was some, previous early concepts that we are taking feedback and building upon in the concepts that people will see to come. I think you've reviewed all of these questions last time. So are you familiar with the Coastal Resilience Plan and other resilience efforts? We will do a quick recap of what we heard in the summertime open houses about preferences that are influencing what they'll see in the alternatives today. Some key takeaways. And then we get into the two alternatives. So we have the project goals. You've all drafted and vetted those with us. This is essentially a prioritization of the goals that have been outlined by this group. Just give a sense of where people's key priorities are, and you'll see the sort of pie chart populate of people's most important goals for the space. An opportunity for any priorities that people would add, and we'll just sort of MC that as they come. This one could stay or it could go. I think what we had earlier had like a lighter touch to a more intensive, and I don't think that's quite right anymore. Really what we're talking about is and maybe it could be done with just a couple of images, but it's, there are different cues for the language of these boardwalks, ranging from more sinuous curvilinear ones like what we see at Lily Pond to the more sort of angular geometry that we see at Easy Street, and the concepts that they will see today draw from those different inspirations. These are updated since you last saw it with the both sort of technical revisions and in talking about or incorporating the graphic comments that you had about including the context of the aerial and having the more sketchy style. So you can see the advancement of the two alternatives. And then we'll go through, the dune swoop again, being this more sinuous design language kind of embedded in the dune. And then Kelly's made some beautiful updates to the sketches. So for each one, you're going to see 3 views. There's the view from the beach side that starts to show the swooping pathway here. A view from the overlook, where I think last time we started to talk about could the benches actually follow the high point of the wall, which is mostly embedded in dunes and planting. And you see the gesture of that path going down to the water. And then we have the aerial view in the context where you see the project.
Really good.
Yeah. Great. Okay, and this, picked up on the discussion we had last time about how sketchy or photorealistic should it be. I think for what it's worth, Holly's feedback was that this style worked really well for feeling like it was contextual, which was nice. So that's the dune swoop. What we decided, I think, last time is that we'd go through both alternatives and then we'd ask for people's feedback so they can kind of compare them in their mind. And so here we have the beach overlook, which is the more angular one that picks up a little bit more on the easy street vocabulary and sort of the historic docks.
Laura, I'm just
Yes.
noticing on this, if you go back on, so this view and the one from alternative one, they have different, like, this one says parking lot improvements, but the other one says stormwater parking lot, so I think just making
Yes,
sure
we thank you for catching that. I think we updated these per the feedback last time and we need to reflect that in the other plan. So thank you. We'll make sure we get that. Then this is just a view from the beach side. And I think what it's to say is that, you know, while the geometry looks distinctive in plan, when you actually get on the ground, you really are seeing the dune and you're seeing, you know, a simple boardwalk and some seating, but it's relatively, it will be relatively embedded in these native plantings that are being proposed. View from the overlook, showing these seating areas, a little bit more expansive area in this scheme for sitting and looking at the view, and then the bird's eye. And then we have them side by side and we'll just highlight what the differences are. So the curvilinear organic, the more angular, and the sort of maritime port language. One other difference, it's subtle, but there's really, you know, the idea with alternative one is that there's just this one boardwalk swoop and that this could be more of like a stone pathway and stairs that are very sort of subtle. The idea with two is that the boardwalk language is more expansive. So that would be another difference.
Can I just ask one question about these two images?
Yes, please.
The scale of the people, they're about the same size as the windows in the background buildings. So are the people images a little small? Or am I just misunderstanding it?
No, let us check that.
Yeah.
We can put in a scale figure in our model and just make sure we're to scale. Okay. And then essentially we have a couple of questions about each. What do you like about alternative one, the dune swoop? And then as people write, maybe I can do a quick sample. Let's see if I'm still in there. Ooh, I spelled it wrong. Their words will come up on the screen and we'll sort of MC that. And then what would you change? This is always tricky, you know, you might get something controversial, but we'll move past it quickly if we do. And then the same question, what do you like about alternative two? What would you change? This one, I think we talked about last time, but just want to confirm that you want to ask this, which is which do you think is, you know, best for Nantucket or however you want to say that, best for the downtown, just to get a poll of people's preferences. I think we do want to be clear that this isn't like a voting exercise where one wins. So this could come out depending on your comfort level. And then we have breakout rooms. So
So long as it's predicted as voting, just preference, I think it's fine, because if people think they're voting and a vote goes one way or the other, that has proven tricky on other things. Again, Baxter Road. So I don't want to do that. If it's just very clear that it's preference, not a vote.
and that the work group will be choosing.
The work group will be and maybe there's an opportunity to say that the work group will be taking all of this feedback to guide the preferred direction for the design, and that it's across a couple of meetings as well.
Or HDC may dictate it.
I was gonna say.
Well, which one did Holly say? The swoop?
She liked the swoop, but
She
she said that she couldn't
But
speak,
that-
you know, she couldn't speak with the voice of the group. There may be others, you
Um,
know. But when we go back to them based on the current schedule, we will be at a preferred direction. So we will be, you know, they'll be looking at one per the current schedule.
So are you looking for a little feedback right now, Laura, on this or not?
And if we include this slide in the virtual open house.
You want to have both, you need to, but I mean, you want, that's what you're asking.
Yeah, we're asking if we should keep the slide for the participants to answer the question, which one?
What
do
are
they
yours, what's
ask
your
for?
preferred?
I agree that they both should be there. I do have a couple of newer thoughts since the last meeting when we had this conversation.
Uh-huh.
All right, so thinking about the mechanics of it and the materials and the underneath and potentially going in different directions. In my, just, I'm not a contractor, but I'm somewhat knowledge of something. So which one's easier to be altered for whatever we end up doing? I bet you the alternative beach overlook one is. Because it's easier to be more direct and straight. Even though you're angled, you're sort of straight angled, like versus this swoopy thing. I mean, my thought is the swoop is only gonna be able to work in the land that we have complete control over. Right, the Francis part, whereas the rest of it is gonna be more like alternative two. Laura, I'm thinking that, but I'm just, the swoop is nice and people are gonna like it. But it might only work here. The rest of it may need to be more sort of straight angle, squared up more.
Yeah, I was,
That makes
I was gonna
sense?
say the same thing, especially when Laura, you mentioned that the lower half of the swoop could be stones or,
Mhm.
something else. Then that doesn't feel like the multimodal path that you may be referring to that runs across the whole front of Washington Street. So
Yeah,
that was.
so
that-
the idea is that both could be adapted. Let me see if I can actually draw here.
That's,
Both could be adapted. Oh, I'm gonna draw very wiggly with my mouse. That you'd, rebuild an extension if you were to want to do the multimodal path. You're right, Nat, that I think this might be a little more straightforward to just sort of,
yeah.
Should it not be which alternative do you think is best for Nantucket, but which aesthetic do you think is best for Nantucket? Because again, alternatives
That's a
are
great
not
idea.
fixed.
Yeah.
right?
I like
It's
that, Rachel.
stylistic.
Good point. The top needs to change. The way it isn't about what's best here, it's about,
And maybe it should actually be the bird's eye view, because I think they're more telling than the plan. Like if we had the bird's eye view side by side and which aesthetic.
Yeah, and I think it's really, we're asking them stylistically, which one do you like? We're not asking them, engineering wise,
Right.
which
Yeah.
plan is.
Yep,
and we're only showing the part that we have kind of control over, which is also.
exactly. Yeah, that's
Should
true.
it be, which you think is more appropriate or best?
Aesthetically pleasing, aesthetically, I mean, that's what she's saying.
Aesthetically
I don't know if
appropriate
the
or-
word pleasing is the right word,
I
but
just think which you would prefer.
yeah, just forget all the rest of the
I
fluffy
mean,
words.
that's what we're asking for their opinion,
Yeah,
right?
I just don't want them to get the idea that this is the design.
Yeah.
It's not a vote.
Right, and that
Right.
fixedness that people sort of latch onto.
Yeah.
I want them to understand that basically what they're voting on is a conceptual aesthetic or style.
but
or-
one of the things though, Rachel,
Yeah.
is this is gonna be, we talked about this at the last meeting with the visual coming around the corner.
Mhm.
You're gonna see this, like this is like kind of almost like a building in the sense, like you're gonna see it. The rest of it, you're not,
Right, that's true.
you're not,
Yeah. It kind
I
of
don't know how to
disappears.
explain what I'm
It
saying, but
disappears.
that's why I'm trying to like not make, I think Brooke is right, keeping it simple, but at the same time, this is what you're gonna look at every time you turn right at Francis. And locals don't use their blankets there.
And they're all looking at the boats and stuff.
So, I mean, that's what I'm thinking, I don't know, but I do understand what Brooke's point is. Brooke's point is keep it simple for the public so they don't
Yeah.
have more
What do you
questions.
prefer?
I mean, that's the catch, right?
Which alternative do you prefer?
Yeah, yeah.
You
Or
could say,
which
else
concept do you prefer?
On looking from Francis, from Union to Francis, I mean, that is what we're saying,
Yeah.
I just, which one appeals to you more? Something really vague.
You know what, that's actually not bad. Yeah,
I mean, obviously, this is, I mean.
See, I love the way it
say
looks right there.
verbally,
That's a
It's
better,
subject to HDC approval, it's
Right,
subject to
you can-
engineering, it's subject
I
to
see
all.
what you're saying.
looking from, you can look in two directions from here. You're looking from an airplane, I get it,
But we're
but
not
you can go the
showing
other
them
way
that view.
too.
No,
Huh?
we're not showing them that view,
I
so
know.
we shouldn't be asking them what they think.
I
about
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And we had that discussion and decided not to advance that view because they were kind of similar. They both go 3 to 4
Yeah.
feet up from in a grassy dune, you know? So, okay,
All right.
we'll wordsmith. That's helpful.
I think we're gonna need to have a sketch to the HDC for an agenda item for them at some point.
What I've done with
Did she
projects,
talk about that with you, Laura?
no, she didn't, but what
Okay.
we've done in the past is we've taken things to the HDC ahead of time,
Yeah.
just as kind of like a heads up,
That's what I
kind
mean,
of
a
like,
sketch, like
yeah.
it's just a
We're
it's
not
not-
asking for a vote, we're not asking
Yeah,
for
we
too
call
much
that.
straw poll would be nice, but.
preliminary plan, there's all
Yeah.
kinds of ways to say it, yep,
Yeah, we've done that, we can do that.
okay.
And my
I-
question was, do we want to go with these alternatives or do we want to, I mean, that's not the current schedule. The current schedule is that we will, the work group will vote on a direction and we'll advance that direction. And then we have a conversation later in schematic design. But just asking, yeah.
Keep it, what appeals to you the better of these two? I think it keeps it simple, doesn't show that there's an actual decision, there's no vote been taken.
Yep.
There's no plans, I think that's better, I think Brooke's point there, just keeping it as simple as possible, but showing those two is important, obviously.
Collecting feedback, but not decision making.
Yeah,
I think
So-
that's great.
Not to get too down Storybook Road, but I've done this with similar projects for routing for thing on Baxter Road. And people, like Rachel already said, people do latch onto things. One or two people that didn't like one particular design, they said, but I voted for this. It doesn't matter that the vote lost.
yeah,
It matters to them what they preferred, and they kept latching onto that. There's this
I know,
problem that we're gonna end up facing where people who don't like it say, this was not my option, this was not my preferred option. It kind of,
Everybody
even after we
can't win.
finish, it means the consensus that we have is diluted. So is a vote necessary?
I can give speeches on not winning, believe me.
So
So
can we
that's-
all, but the thing is this
Jeez.
gonna cause another problem?
Having all the ideas and
Yeah.
not winning.
Verbal, well, obviously, people feel like they're voting, right, but I think we have to just verbally say. We just want to get more opinions than the 12 of us who are on the committee.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That. You know, we're
Feedback,
curious what appeals to the folks who showed up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm nervous about, I have to say it, is showing a result on the screen. 20 votes to swoop, 10 to angularity, and then, yeah, that is something that, you know, people latch onto numbers, percentages.
Yeah,
I mean, there are 2 meetings.
I mean, this isn't a roundabout or not,
Yeah,
this is
there's-
2
oh, so-
different kinds of roundabouts, we're gonna have one of them. I mean, that's how it is.
You're right.
I don't know, I'm looking at this completely different on this part,
yeah,
because we have control of this part, this is
Yeah.
different than the rest of it.
yeah.
Well, just
Well-
to
You know
make
what I
it clear
mean?
as well, because the select board, I mean, has taken a bit of flack on when these things happen before. Just flagging it that people might complain after the fact to this 5 voting members that I wanted X, I didn't get X, you voted Y, why did you do that to me?
Yeah, I
You're
think-
negatively impacting me and my
I'm sorry.
property.
That happens all day
Yeah.
long around here.
It does, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to prepare you for that.
I
The
know.
more open and transparent you are, the less anyone knows, so I don't know what to tell you.
I think during for the voting, I'm not calling it voting. The
Preference.
whichever one you like. Multiple different ways you explain the same thing,
Ooh.
that
True,
this is feedback.
Yeah.
You know, just like,
Yeah.
as people are clicking their mouse, we just keep talking.
Let me ask a different question. So the purpose of this meeting and all these questions we're asking is for you as the working group to get the information that you need to make a decision on a preferred direction. And that has, like has been said before, there's a lot of inputs. That has technical inputs, that is HDC inputs, that, you know, it has your own preferences as constituency. So, I mean, there's a world where the framing, and we've done this before, is you say, okay, we're not asking you to pick one. What we want to, we put out a couple of alternatives that have differences. we'd like to understand what you prefer and what you don't about each. We're going to take all of that feedback and that's going to inform a refined design. And so if we have that framing, then we just say, what do you like about each of them? What would you change about each of them? And we skip this. Unless you feel like for your process, it's useful to see, oh, 2/3 the people liked X, and that's going to help your decision making. If you don't feel like you need this and you feel like there's already an understanding of preferences, maybe we don't ask it.
I think for keeping it simple, asking, we're curious what you think of these two alternatives, or some simple, non-binding question somehow. Because I do think we need to show both. I hate to say it. In this spot, the rest of it, I'm agreeing with getting rid of the red line, blah, blah, for now.
So if we go into breakout rooms and there's scribes,
Yes.
maybe we do this rather than as a Mentimeter vote where the results come up, we just do a raise hands and have the scribe write down what the vote is. And, I don't know. I'm constantly explaining to people that they don't really have the final choice for things all day long. It's really,
Yeah,
I mean.
but that doesn't mean they're not
It's
upset
not
about
Arizona.
it.
Well, and I think aligning the questions that we are asking with the input we actually want, that's all I'm trying to say. If we, if the decision's coming from a lot of factors and this isn't useful, then we don't need to ask it.
What do you think, Alan?
I think what we're doing is asking people for their opinion. This is an opinion survey. You know, this is not a definitive vote on
Right.
A, Y, or Z. And I think that, we just need to make it clear that this is what we're looking for. We're looking for input. We're looking for ideas. What are your thoughts? Here are a couple of situations. Maybe they'll have something even better than proposed.
I have an idea.
Yes.
Why don't we have them rank each one on a scale of 1 to 5?
Nice.
So there's no vote.
I like it.
How much do you like alternative 1 on a scale of 1 to 5? How much do you like
yeah,
alternative
that's
2
good.
on a scale of 1 to 5?
Okay.
And then there's no final number.
Smart. Kelly, do you
Oh.
know off the top of your head if Mentimeter can do that? We can explore.
Yeah.
I like that. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
That's actually good.
It gets us to an American
Yeah.
type of answer without it being.
And it still gives you data of like, oh, wow, everybody really liked this one, but it doesn't, it's not, yeah. Okay, love it. We will see what we can do on the back end to
Oh, I like this. I
accomplish
like it
that.
a lot.
I can't find my raise hand function, but I just have
okay,
something
cool.
quick to
Yeah,
add.
go ahead.
Is there a point in this slide where we describe next steps too, and that there is like the next hierarchy of regulator review too, which could also influence the
It's a
design?
good point. We have a next steps placeholder, but I think we should actually have some bullets. Yeah.
All you have to do is say next step HTC, steps involved, HTC approval, and everyone will, well, this isn't final.
Yeah, but Cole is thinking big picture about how it's gonna be a Herculean task to get, a steel sheet pile inside a coastal dune. As well, so.
Yeah, and get
We,
the state, the
We
Concom,
looked at that more. It wouldn't work in this environment. We were chatting to someone about that, about the plastic sheet piling. Cold.
What's wrong?
Oh yeah, we have a cantilevered sheet here, probably like 4 or 5 feet above ground surface. It would be very difficult to do that with material other than steel. However, that steel can be cladded with wood to make it look a lot more, at home on Nantucket, which we've done on other projects too.
I love
Anyway.
forever stuff.
yeah.
So next steps will be after the
Yeah, we wanted
breakout
to make sure we
session.
checked
After
it.
the breakout. So we'll come back. I think what we typically like to do is to have one person and we'll work on this in our logistics meeting on Monday, but how that report back happens, whether we ask a staff member or one of the consultant team members could report back. I think it's better if it's coming from either a participant in the group or a staff member. Just recap what we talked about. And then we'll have, and I think we should workshop this, Leah, Vince, Rachel, just like make sure we have the right next steps. And talk about how people can stay involved. So that's where we are.
So,
Very, very helpful feedback. Did I stop sharing? Sorry. I think on our agenda, we also need to review the questions that are being put out in the survey form that will be associated with the Spanish translation, Leah, right?
Pretty much the same questions that are within
Yeah,
the presentation.
I'll reshare my screen, but yeah, they're it's essentially a extraction of the questions that we have in the Mentimeter. So are you familiar with the resilience plan, ranking the priority or selecting priorities? Are there priorities you'd add? And then what do you like? What would you change about each? And then we'll match this question to our language about which of the schemes most appeals to you, or however we wordsmith that. And so that essentially will be translated into Spanish with a info sheet in Spanish that is a distillation of the presentation.
We just need approval of the feedback.
and we went through this last meeting with these questions, or,
They're the same questions.
yeah.
Same questions.
Yeah.
But in feedback form.
So unless anybody has any comments, then we'd be looking for a motion.
To
To
approve the
approve
language, right?
the language.
Rachel? Okay, I'll make
Yes.
that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
We have to do roll call.
because Matt's online.
Okay,
All right.
right, thank you.
Okay.
Roll call vote. Let's see, Matt, are you here?
Yep, I'm in favor. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, John?
Favor.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Anyone else?
They're the five.
Everybody else.
That's it. Okay, thank you very much. All in favor?
Okay.
Motion is accepted.
motion to adjourn.
Wait, we have one more thing.
Two more
Before
you
things.
adjourn, one more thing.
If you need, you can, because
What are the
there's,
next 2 things?
it's just an update about the Saltmar Center parking lot vision, and then next steps.
Should we move the Saltmar Center to the next meeting?
I mean, we don't have to talk about that now. I mean, I don't think, I mean,
If
we all
give it-
kind of know,
Yeah.
but we don't know, you know?
Pretty much exactly that.
You got your Irish version of parking lot in there.
Car park is a great word. And the other thing is, so that everyone briefly understands this. We did have a meeting with Kevin Manuel and his team that are looking at this morning, like right before this meeting, so that we'd be able to give them an update.
Okay.
We can push it to the next meeting, other than to say that we are going to work collaboratively with that group to make sure it all makes sense.
Yeah.
And we will be,
Excellent.
we're ahead of time of their project,
A
so
lot.
whatever we do on ours, they will use that
So there
information
we go. We
further.
spent more time
So-
talking about whether we should do the update than the update took, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I just wanna say, Laura, don't forget the language thing in that weird word parking in the green space on one of the slides.
Yes, we're gonna match up the
Yeah.
approved labels on all the plans.
If
We're-
that gets shown to the public, it will be a problem to see something like that. And then I think that looks good too, those two spots, by the way. So nobody said anything about that, but we had that ad nauseum conversation about paths and access. I think.
Oh,
if we-
yeah,
Leaving those looking like that
just,
removes all questions a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I think
Yes.
that looks good.
So we don't have to talk about it.
We don't have to talk about that anymore. Like, that's good.
and we're not asking for feedback. We're saying, hey, we're gonna do what we can on
Absolutely.
stormwater management here. And we're asking for your feedback on the beach side, which is candidly what everybody was more interested in when we met in the summer anyway. So,
For sure.
Thank you, everyone, for this.
thank
So
you.
now we can have a motion to adjourn now?
No.
Do you have
No.
one more?
Oh,
Slide,
Oh, is that-
one
okay.
more.
Project meeting schedule.
Oh.
Do we need to discuss what our next meeting is and then we can adjourn?
I got them all written
Okay.
I
down.
have an issue with the calendar, I
You're-
have something
You
that I
are
may
like
not
nuts
be
with the
able to
meeting
make.
schedule stuff.
Yeah.
You and
So our
Megan.
next meeting is on the 24th, is that right?
Next meeting is on the 24th, and
I
that,
will not be able to be there that day.
okay.
Okay.
That is when you all will be deciding which design to move the 30%.
I'll just have. to
Brooke,
go
if
to
you
my
wanna,
peers.
if you wanna email me comments, I can read them at the meeting.
I'd be happy to be there. I think
Yep.
the work has been done well. I'd be okay with either one. So,
It's good to hear.
Yeah,
yeah,
I know.
really, I think they're both.
Okay, so we're okay with the 124 collaborative work group meeting, and. That
And then
is,
we're gonna be moving speedily into technical documentation to get the schematic design prepared for March.
So my only question is, can we get more of a read from the HDC before we invest more in one design or the other?
We'll
Can we
talk to
get a
Holly
more
about,
formal feedback?
yeah, we'll get it,
than-
on-
than
talk to Holly
Holly's?
about getting on an agenda.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's critical.
I had asked her and she said to come when it's more like 30% design.
Okay.
So, but the thing is, I see where you're coming from, but with our schedule and what's in the scope, we're just going with them with the preferred.
Okay,
So,
and
we explained that to Holly too.
right,
so.
okay.
I personally feel like we've done a lot of projects at the land bank with HDC, and most of the time we can work within the parameters of whatever we've designed, and they, make subtle shifts here and there. Mostly their concern often is, ADA.
Yeah.
And materials, right?
And some materials, but I don't know, like, please change that from a granite bench to a wood bench,
Got it.
So,
Okay, I just didn't want to make sure we were going down a dead end.
yeah, definitely.
I had the same question, but yeah, I think whatever y'all think is best.
I'm just going off what Holly said. So.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Okay,
all right.
thanks for another productive conversation. We'll see you Monday and hopefully we have a good turnout.
We should do
Thank
a roll
you.
call vote again.
Oh.
Yes. So do I have a motion to adjourn though?
So
Right,
moved.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Seconded, okay, roll call vote. Matt,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
Alan, Matt,
All right, thank you.
motion's adjourned. Thank you very much.
You guys, this is a very productive group. No,
Productive for
I come
for
and we make
this day and
decisions
age,
and
that's
we
the
move
problem.
forward.
That's the kind of time.
It's what. I wish the rest of my world would work this way. Have a nice week, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you, Laura, thank you, everyone.
Explaining that.